Have you ever stopped to think how really old tools, ancient tools, might actually hold some answers for our biggest challenges today? Things like food security, sustainability. Today we're going on this really unique journey to Nepal. We're going to explore how this ancient plow and the ox pulling it, how they built an entire way of life, and crucially what we can learn as that way of life is, well, kind of fading.
Yeah.
Our focus is Nepal's traditional ox plowing system. And at the heart of it is this wooden plow. It's called a halo. Seems humble, but it's incredibly sophisticated. This deep dive, it's not just about the tool, it's the whole package, right? The implements, the animals, the people. It was a whole socio-ecological thing. We want to unpack why it's declining and, maybe surprisingly, what lessons it holds for all of us.
Absolutely. And to really understand this vanishing practice, we've looked at some amazing sources, detailed ethnographic analyses, the kind that really capture how people lived it, and also comparative studies placing Nepal in a bigger global picture of agriculture. So it's more than just like a history lesson. It's about getting inside a whole worldview, a really complex, integrated one that's, well, it's disappearing as we speak.
Okay, let's dive into that system then. Starting with the halo itself, you said it's more than just a tool. What's the core idea behind its design? What makes it special?
It's fascinating, really. The Nepali halo is what's called an ard, a scratch plow.
A scratch plow.
Yeah, so unlike a lot of plows that, turn the soil right over, the halo just sort of loosens it. It makes a V-shaped furrow but doesn't invert the earth. And what makes it a technological complex, that's the term researchers use, is how all its parts work together in perfect harmony. Think of it like a precision system, but made from local stuff.
It says more every piece counts. Okay. Can you walk us through the main components? Give us a picture.
Sure. So first you've got the beam. In Nepali, it's the harris or haldabo. It's the long wooden pole, kind of the backbone, connects to the yoke on the oxen. Its length, the angle, that's all crucial for controlling how deep the plow goes, keeping it stable.
The main connection point.
Exactly. Then there's the body, the ano. That's the central, heavy, curved block of wood, like the chassis of the whole thing. It's carved really carefully from tough local hardwoods, things like cactus, sala, chillon trees, stuff that lasts.
Okay.
Then you have the handle, the mudo, that's what the farmer, the hali, holds onto, to steer, adjust the depth, lift it if they hit a rock or something. It's the human interface, basically.
Got it.
And finally, the bit that does the real work in the soil, the share, the fali, that's the iron tip, the blade. That's what breaks the ground and cuts that V-shaped furrow. Just that single point.
Wow. It sounds like, elegant engineering. But totally useless without power, right?
Yeah.
And that's the jotara, the yoke and harness. That sounds really interesting.
The jotara is absolutely critical. It starts with the yoke, the jiwa. Just a single wooden beam withers the shoulders of the two oxen. It's that classic shoulder yoke design you see across Asia. And getting it right is vital for the animal's welfare, obviously, but also for efficiency. The underside has these two carefully carved, sort of semicircular grooves. They have to fit the oxen's necks comfortably.
So it's not just strapping them in, it has to actually fit properly.
Precisely. A bad fit means pain, and that means they can't work as well. It's real craftsmanship. And then you've got the harness ropes, Nara and Heliendo, traditionally made from local plant fibers. They secure the jiwa to the oxen, and then they link the plow's beam, the harris, to the jiwa. Simple, but it channels all that ox power right down to the plowshare.
So all this careful tool making,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean for the artists, the people who actually make these things? Is it just building equipment?
Oh, it's much more than that. Making a halo or a jiwa is often talked about as sacred craftsmanship, like muscle and meditation combined. And central to it is this tool called the basila. It's a special kind of wood carving chisel, curved, and it's not something you buy in a shop. A local blacksmith, the kami, makes it by hand, and they tailor it specifically for the woodworker, the karmi. Its hooked blade is kind of unique. It's perfect for scooping out that hollow saddle shape on the underside of the juar, the part that rests on the ox's neck. Modern machines, they just can't easily do that kind of precision carving.
Huh. So the tool itself is specialized, handcrafted.
Yeah. And the artisans, they choose the wood really carefully, strong but flexible, let it season properly. And in some places, making a new halo or even just sharpening the basila before planting season, it's almost a ritual. It's all part of this bigger cultural ecosystem, this deep understanding of how humans, animals, land, even the gods are all connected. So the plow, the halo, it's not just a thing. It's seen as a cultural artifact,
Yeah.
like a living piece of Nepali history.
A living artifact.
And
That's a powerful way to put it. But, okay, the halo needs its engine, the ox. Tell us about the relationship there. Is it purely about work?
No, not at all. The main animal here in the hills and plains is the ox, the goru. That's a castrated male bovine. They're really valued. Strong, incredible endurance, but also quite docile. Easier to handle and train than a bull.
Right.
And for small farmers, they make economic sense. They can live mostly on, leftover bits from crops. During the busy season, a pair of oxen in the hills can plow about, maybe a quarter of a hectare in an 8-hour day. That's a huge help, vital support for human labor. Looking after them is a year-round job, of course. But feeding ramps up during the working season. Farmers use this cut-and-carry system for fodder, bring it to the animals, supplement it with things like oil cakes, brands, pulses, just to keep their strength up.
So it's a big commitment, time, resources. But you mentioned it goes deeper than just farming.
Yeah.
How ingrained is the ox in the culture?
Oh, deeply. Its role goes way beyond just being a work animal. It's really seen as a sacred partner. This comes from Hindu traditions, where the cow is revered, the universal mother, and killing cows is forbidden. The ox, so the male counterpart and the farmer's right hand, shares that sacred status. You see this really clearly during the Tihar festival, the 4th day. It's called Goru Tihar or Govardhan Puja. It's all about honoring the ox.
Honoring the ox.
Farmers will bathe their oxen, decorate them with colorful powders, put garlands on them, and feed them special treats, like rice, dal, the sweet fried bread called sel roti. It's this really profound way of saying thank you for all their hard work.
That sounds like a really beautiful ceremony.
It really is.
Yeah.
And sometimes the day is also called Hali Tihar. That honors the Hali, the plowman, and the plow itself, too. It acknowledges that whole team, human-animal tool that makes farming possible. There's even a link to the god Shiva and his sacred bull, Nandi. But here's an important question, right? What does this ritual do beyond just religion? Well, it acts as this powerful socioeconomic thing. It reinforces the deal, the contract between the farmer and the animal, both moral and practical.
A contract.
Yeah. By publicly thanking the ox, feeding it well, farmers are showing they value it. It builds this community sense of care, discourages bad treatment. The whole relationship is framed as being about reciprocity, give and take.
That's a really key distinction. Not just labor for food, but a kind of moral agreement.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. A tractor. It needs fuel, maintenance. Those are just economic transactions, right? Purely business. But the ox needed a relationship governed by this sort of moral economy of care. So when you switch from the goru to a machine, you're not just changing tools, you're changing the whole basis of farming, from relational to transactional.
That's a profound shift. Okay, so you've got these special tools, this deep connection. How does the actual plowing work on the ground? What does it look like day to day?
Well, the rhythm is set by the agricultural calendar. The main plowing, the tillage, happens before the monsoon rains arrive, getting the fields ready. The hali, the farmer, has to be really skilled, guiding the oxen, using their weight, controlling the handle, keeping the furrow straight, the depth consistent. And this all kind of culminates, culturally speaking, during Ropai. That's the rice planting festival. It happens on Ashar 15, usually late June, early July. And Ropai it's joyful, it's communal. Typically, the men do the heavy work, plowing the muddy paddy fields with the oxen, and the women follow behind, transplanting the young rice seedlings into the furrows.
And I heard there are songs involved.
Yes. To make the hard work feel lighter, people sing Asar Geet songs of Ashar, the planting month. They're folk songs, sung together. They entertain, they set a rhythm for the work, they kind of ease the physical strain, and they really strengthen that community feeling. Some songs are even sung directly to the oxen, praising them, encouraging them. It's this amazing expression of that partnership. And it's getting rarer now, You hear the roar of a power tiller instead of the rhythm of a folk song.
That's such a vivid image. The soundscape changing, too. It sounds like this whole practice must vary quite a bit across Nepal, given the landscape. What stands out to you about those differences?
Oh, absolutely. It's not one size fits all. The way traditional plowing happens adapts incredibly well to Nepal's really dramatic geography. Let's take a look at a few key areas. First, you have the Western Hills around Pokhara, for example. That's your classic mid-hill farming scene. Terraced fields carved into the slopes, mixed crops, livestock, forests nearby. The farmer's toolkit here is pretty comprehensive. You've got the halo and oxen, of course, for plowing, but also the kodali, that's a type of hoe, for shaping terraces. The karoti, a sickle for harvesting, the diki, this cool foot-powered pestle for getting the husks off grain, and the jado, a hand mill for grinding.
Wow, a whole suite of tools.
Yeah. And after the harvest, they have this practice called dahin. It's communal threshing. They use bulls or oxen, drive them in circles over the cut paddy stalks to separate the grain. Really highlights that community cooperation. Interestingly, though, the Pokhara area was one of the first places to see changes. Those two-wheel tractors, power tillers, they started appearing there back in the 70s and 80s, used for plowing and for transport.
So even back then, a mix of old and new in some places. What about the flatlands, the terai?
Total contrast down in the Terai Plains. That's Nepal's agricultural engine room. Flat, fertile land, huge potential for large-scale farming. Now, oxen are used, but the real star player there, especially for wet paddy fields, is the water buffalo. Boobalis boobalis. They're just perfectly built for working in deep mud.
Ah, buffalo instead of oxen.
Mainly, yeah. And they're powerhouses. A pair of swamp buffalo can plow like 0.37 hectares a day, significantly more than the oxen manage up in the hills. Farming there is much more intensive, too. Draft animals might work around 130 days a year compared to maybe 62 in the hills.
Huge difference.
And all that intensity, it's driving massive mechanization. Four-wheel tractors, combined harvesters, rotovators, seed drills, they're pretty common now. And critically, more than half the farms in the Terai now use iron moldboard plows. That's a fundamental shift away from the traditional halo.
Okay, so hills versus plains, very different stories. What about the really high, tough areas?
Right. Then you have the eastern and high mountains. We're talking marginal land, steep slopes, short growing seasons. Conventional plowing with a halo is often just impossible. So up high, farmers might rely on the diesel.
Diesel?
Yeah, it's a hybrid, a cross between a yak and a cow. Really hardy, adapted to the thin air, the cold. And they have these unique ways of farming, like the bung system in the eastern hills. It's for potatoes. No plowing. They slash the vegetation, pile it up, burn it, and plant the potato tubers right in the mound. Get surprisingly good yields. There's a similar practice called choria in some mid-hill areas where a halo just won't work.
Wow. So completely different strategies where the plow is an option.
Exactly. So just to quickly sum up those regional differences. High mountains, mostly diesel or oxen, woodenards or no plow systems like bung, very little mechanization. Mid-hills, mainly oxen, woodenards, some mechanization, especially those two-wheel tillers coming in early. Terai plains, water buffalo and oxen, but increasingly dominated by iron moldboard plows and heavy machinery, high mechanization levels. Each region really has its own tailored approach.
That breakdown really shows how adaptable these systems were, or are.
Mm-hmm.
But given all that, especially the changes in the terai, what's threatening this whole tradition? Why is the halo system disappearing?
Well, sadly, it's not just about new technology being better. The decline of the halo system it's complex. It's this tangle of economic forces, social changes, demographic shifts that are really reshaping rural Nepal. First off, you've got the mechanical revolution. Since the 70s, the government policy has really pushed modernization. Chemical fertilizers, high-yield seeds, and yes, mechanization. And, the economics look pretty good on paper. Mechanized rice farms down in the Terai, they are more profitable, lower labor costs, higher margins, better return on investment. A mini tiller saves a huge amount of time and back-breaking work.
Okay, so it's faster, cheaper. Sounds like a no-brainer. Why isn't everyone using machines then?
That's a great question. Because despite those advantages, Nepal's overall mechanization rate is still pretty low compared to other parts of South Asia. There are hurdles, lack of awareness sometimes, not enough people offering repair services, and crucially, the land itself. All those small, fragmented, terraced fields in the hills, they're just not suited for big machines. Plus, sometimes you get what researchers call pseudo-adoption. Farmers might use machines when there are subsidies, but drop them when the support stops. The technology just doesn't fully integrate into their farming system or their economic reality.
Right, it doesn't always stick.
But maybe the biggest driver, the most powerful force, is the human exodus. We're talking mass migration. Millions of young Nepalis, mostly men, leaving rural areas to find work abroad. This creates this huge labor shortage back home, especially for farm work.
Labor shortage. Because farming is seen differently now.
Exactly. That exodus is tied to this big shift in social values. Farming is increasingly seen as, low status, hard work for little profit. So the younger generation turns away. And when they leave, that chain of knowledge gets broken. How to manage oxen, how to carve a jua just right, how to read the soil, the weather. That traditional expertise isn't being passed down.
That's critical, losing the know-how, not just the people. And what happens to the farms when the men leave?
Well, you see this trend called the feminization of agriculture. Women are increasingly left managing the farms. Since plowing was traditionally seen as men's work, this creates a real demand for technologies that women can handle more easily, like those mini tillers, so women are being trained on them. It's a practical response to a huge demographic shift.
Mhm.
And the direct result of all this, the labor shortage, the changing attitudes, is what some call the silent collapse. Farmland is just being abandoned. Between 2012 and 2022, estimates suggest Nepal lost around 300,000 hectares of cultivated land. In Kakaskeski district, in the hills, nearly half, 47% of the land that could be farmed is just lying fallow.
Nearly half.
Yeah.
That must have knock-on effects.
Huge ecological ones, those traditional terraces. When they were farmed, irrigated, they acted like sponges, holding water, recharging springs and groundwater. But when they're abandoned, they decay. They lose that ability to hold water. And this disruption to the local water cycle, it's now seen as a major factor behind the widespread drying of springs across Nepal. It's causing a serious water crisis in many areas.
So connecting the dots,
Yeah.
it sounds like a devastating cycle.
It really is. The decline of the halo isn't just about a tool vanishing. It signals the erosion of an entire way of thinking, a philosophy of interdependence, deep ecological knowledge, that symbiotic connection to the land. It's all fading. It shows this fundamental decoupling, of Nepal's social systems and its ecological systems, and it feeds itself. Social changes lead to economic pressures, which favor maybe ill-suited technology, which leads to land abandonment, which causes ecological damage, which then gives people even more reason to leave. It's a vicious circle.
This story, it feels so specific to Nepal, but like you said, it has these universal echoes. How does the halo actually fit into the bigger global picture of farming history?
You're absolutely right. It's not just a Nepali story. The halo belongs to one of the two big families of plows that shaped agriculture worldwide, the ard and the moldboard. The halo is a classic ard, or scratch plow. Its key feature is that it's symmetrical. It cuts that V-shaped furrow, like we said, but, and this is crucial, it doesn't turn the soil over, it just loosens it. This is basically a form of conservation tillage. It leaves a lot of the crop residue, the old stalks and leaves, on the surface.
And that's good for the soil.
Yeah, it helps conserve moisture, keeps the soil cooler, prevents erosion. Think of it like using a rake in your garden, just loosening the top layer, keeping that protective mulch. Ards are great for lighter soils, sandy, thin soils, and drier climates, though maybe less effective against deep-rooted weeds. And it's the older technology, it goes way back to the Neolithic.
Okay, so the ard is the rake. The moldboard must be the shovel then.
Exactly. The moldboard plow, which came later, developed in places like Europe and China, is asymmetrical. It has this curved part, the moldboard. It cuts a slice of soil and completely flips it over, burying all the weeds and residue.
Ah, burying the weeds. Sounds useful.
It is, especially for improving drainage and airflow in heavy, cold, wet soils like clay soils in northern Europe. But because it leaves the soil surface bare, it makes the land really vulnerable to wind and water erosion. The moldboard was a huge innovation, though, really powered the agricultural revolution in medieval Europe. Two different philosophies of interacting with the soil.
Fascinating. And the animal power itself, is that also universal?
Oh yeah. Draft animal power DAP, you find it almost everywhere, historically and even today. Oxen are the mainstay in Nepal, as we've seen. But globally, you've got horses, especially in Europe. Donkeys and mules are vital in dry or mountainous areas. Camels in deserts. Even elephants used for heavy work in Southeast Asia. And of course, water buffalo are indispensable for wet rice farming all across Asia. And the way they're harnessed varies too. Nepal uses that withers yoke for oxen. Other places in Africa or Europe use a head yoke. Horses, because they pull differently, need that padded collar that rests on their shoulders, allows them to pull much more efficiently. And despite all the tractors, DAP is still absolutely vital for hundreds of millions of small farmers, particularly in South Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. For them, it's often the most affordable, sustainable, and frankly appropriate technology for their situation.
That global context really drives home how important and widespread animal power still is. Okay, so pulling all this together, the intricate Nepali system, its worrying decline, the global picture, what does this deep dive suggest? Is there a way forward? Can this wisdom be preserved?
Well, the path forward probably isn't about choosing either tradition or modernity. It's more about finding ways for them to work together, Sustainable integration. For cultural and heritage groups, there's a real urgency. Documenting the intangible stuff, the skills of the Karmi woodworker, how to use that special Bazilla chisel, collecting those Asargit folk songs before they're forgotten, supporting museums, cultural centers, maybe even craft movements with exhibitions, training that can keep the knowledge alive and raise awareness. Then, for government and development agencies, maybe it's time to rethink agricultural policy a bit. Move beyond just pushing mechanization at all costs. Look at supporting hybrid systems, systems that blend that traditional ecological wisdom with useful modern innovations. And, crucially, tackle the root causes of why the system is failing. Things like insecure land tenure, lack of decent jobs in rural areas to stop the migration drain, investing in community-led water management, soil conservation.
So making farming viable again, basically, and integrating solutions smartly, not just replacing everything wholesale.
Exactly. And finally, for education and tourism, why not teach kids about these traditional farming systems in school, build appreciation, maybe spark interest, and things like cultural tourism, educational farm stays, maybe centered around events like the Ropai Festival, that could give communities a direct economic reason to keep these traditions going. Let visitors actually experience this way of life.
This whole exploration of Nepal's halo system, it's really hit home that it's about so much more than just an old tool fading away, isn't it? It represents a whole connection to the land.
Absolutely. And if you connect it to the bigger picture today, those core principles of the halo system, relying on renewable energy, the ox, using local resources, conserving soil instead of just turning it over, integrating livestock and crops, working together as a community. I mean, these are exactly the kinds of things that modern agroecology movements are championing now. It's almost like the future of sustainable farming might actually learn a lot from the past.
Right. So the challenge isn't trying to turn back the clock. It's about recognizing the wisdom that's embedded in these old ways, in the furrow itself, before it disappears completely from living memory. So maybe the question for you, listening, is what lessons from this ancient practice, this deep connection between people, animals, and the land, might be most valuable for you as we all try to figure out a more sustainable way forward?